Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vanchakalpatruyascha kripasindhubhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you for coming to this beautiful Srila Prabhupada Leela class. And I'm sorry that Daiva Shakti is not here, but she's with her two beautiful grandchildren and her lovely daughter. Very nice. Hare Krishna. I just came from being with them. So Srila Prabhupada's early pastimes, this is today's date, December 7th. India Revisited, Part 2. Prabhupada's train, the Kalka Mail, pulled into the Delhi station. Prabhupada and his two disciples had tickets with reserved seats, but no car number. So while Prabhupada waited with the baggage, Achyutananda and Ramanuja ran from one end of the train to the other looking for their car. After they had found their seats and boarded, Achyutananda untied Prabhupada's bedding and spread it open on the upper tier. Prabhupada climbed the little ladder, sat comfortably on his cotton-stuffed quilt, and opened his Sanskrit Srimad Bhagavatam while Achyutananda and Ramanuja took their seats. I have to say it was always scary catching the train, never knowing where you're supposed to sit and how much that would be even more so with Srila Prabhupada. You've got the most precious person you could imagine that you ever met in your whole life, and you're now responsible for finding where they're supposed to be, and exactly, you don't want to leave him unprotected. In fact, there was one instance where was on the way back from Kumbh Mela, where we were at the train station, and there were, Kumbh Mela is really, really huge. And we were with Srila Prabhupada, it was in 1977, and there was like a mob scene. And so Govindadasi she took Rameshwar's danda and she put it sideways so that right in front of Prabhupada to block everyone from coming or bumping Srila Prabhupada. So you don't even have to worry about yourself, you're worrying about your spiritual father, and you want to make sure. And Srila Prabhupada at that time was even taking a palanquin to come down the stairs. He was frail, so we were very concerned about him. So you can imagine at the train station with all the pushing and everything, how much exciting this would be. So it would take around 24 hours to reach Calcutta. Near the end of the journey, a group of educated Bengali gentlemen struck up a philosophical conversation with the Swami. "We do not worship any form," said one, speaking fluent English in a loud, deep voice. "We have a marble Omkara that we worship, and we sit and pray to that." "That is also form," said Srila Prabhupada. He was reluctant to attack their philosophical position directly. "We practice karma yoga," the gentleman went on, not heeding Prabhupada's previous point, because in karma yoga you can stay within your position. "But karma yoga is not full surrender of the soul," said Srila Prabhupada. "One must come to the stage of bhakti." "Oh no," the man protested, "emotionalism is very harmful. Karma yoga," Srila Prabhupada exploded, "Karma yoga is for the fools." Silence. Another man, not with the Bengalis, but seated beside them, spoke up. Obviously, Swamiji is a learned scholar, he said. You shouldn't argue like that. The Bengali that Prabhupada had shouted at got up and moved to another seat. Later, he came back. Are you insulted? Prabhupada asked him. No, he replied. But I have never heard anyone say that about the teachings of the Gita. The Bengalis then talked to Achyutananda, lighting their cigarettes and smoking freely before him. Although they had not dared to do so before Prabhupada, it wasn't proper to smoke in front of a sadhu. Bengalis, Achyutananda told them, citing one of Prabhupada's examples, were very sorry that East Pakistan had been cut off from the rest of Bengal. But Krishna consciousness could elevate people to international universal consciousness. Then there wouldn't be any such division. The Bengalis appreciated Achyutananda's remark, though they continued to blow smoke in his face as the train rattled over the last miles of Calcutta. I've had this experience. There'll be a no smoking sign up. And you point to the sign. They're smoking. Hare Krishna. And then you say, no smoking. Prabhupada was greeted at Calcutta's Howrah station by relatives, mostly from his sister's family, and by devotees of the Goswami Mat. About 50 people were on hand. They offered Prabhupada flower garlands and sandalwood paste, and then escorted him and his disciples into a car. That reminds me of a time when we landed with Srila Prabhupada, and on the train there was a gentleman, and he was met by many, and Prabhupada noted he had a following. But then later, when he was arguing with someone, Srila Prabhupada noted, he's lost his stage. He lost his powers. So Achyutananda and Ramanuja noticed that although Swamiji's sister was shorter and more rotund than Prabhupada, her facial features were strikingly similar. Her name was Bhavatarini, but Prabhupada told them to call her Pishama aunt. She was so motherly, very loving to the children. When my son was traveling, he was 3 with us, she would just take him. She would just mother love, she's just the most loving person. As Prabhupada rode through the streets, he saw many images of Goddess Kali, 10-armed riding a lion. Calcutta was observing the biggest religious celebration in Bengal, Kali Puja, a month of festivities in honor of the Goddess Kali. Throughout the city, brass bands and radio music blared, and there were decorative lights, stages, and tents. When Prabhupada arrived at Pishama's house in South Calcutta, his relatives seated him and performed an artik ceremony in his honor, reverently offering him the traditional items, incense, a flaming lamp, flowers. They also bathed his feet. He sat smiling within the crowded room of relatives who were proud of his having journeyed to America on behalf of Lord Krishna. Can you imagine how affectionate they were for their Srila Prabhupada, their family member, their beloved Prabhupada coming home? As Prabhupada's family members sang Hare Krishna Kirtan from outside the room, the ladies of the house began singing a high, shrill, whooping sound, the oodling. Achyutananda and Ramanuja were startled. Pishama had prepared a large feast, much of it cooked in mustard seed oil for the homecoming celebration. She used to smuggle it in her sari to cook for Prabhupada. He liked it, but it wasn't good for his health. He enjoyed it. If you want to learn to cook to please a person, you learn to cook from a family member, because that's the food they grew up with that they loved. So Srila Prabhupada's sister made the food that Prabhupada really enjoyed. Still, he teased her mercilessly. He would say, she's trying to kill me. But what a way to go, out of love. So much love Bhishma had. She doted on him. Oops, microphone. She doted on him. She had so much affection for him. Soon after the festivities, Prabhupada satisfied her by honoring the prasadam, even though he wasn't feeling well and was tired from the train ride. We had one instance, we see Prabhupada, he received more service than he even wanted, more accolades than he wanted, more garlands that he could possibly ever wear, constantly giving. Even there was one pastime where Srila Prabhupada, a dear devotee of his, brought sandalwood oil. And he was insisting that Prabhupada would get a sandalwood massage from head to toe. Prabhupada would generally, and Srila Prabhupada knew that it would make him too cold. But because he had so much affection for his disciple, he let them do it anyway. And he got a little chill afterwards, and he mentioned. But still, Prabhupada was like that. He would receive, even if it was hard on him. That was just, he would receive just because he could see the love it was being offered with. And that's the main thing. What do we have to offer but the love? Soon after the festivities, Prabhupada and his disciples retired. Again, his health wavered, this time because of his sister's heavy cooking, and he felt a strain on his heart. He sent for an Ayurvedic doctor who taught Achyutananda how to do a very gentle massage to help the circulation and restrict Prabhupada from sweets. Oh, that's hard. As Prabhupada recovered, he began regularly lecturing in his room during the evening. Although he spoke in English for his disciples, the room would soon fill to capacity with relatives and friends. There were generally disturbances from outside due to the noises of the Kali Puja. Nearby Bhishima's house was a large tent, a center for evening street parties, which included a sweet counter, fireworks, and excessively loud public address systems that incongruously blared Julie Andrews singing songs from The Sound of Music. Such a diverse setting here. You've got Kali Puja in juxtaposition to Julie Andrews loudly singing. Oh my goodness. And there's one pastime where Mukunda Maharaj they were going into the city of New York, and he was so worried about Prabhupada. How will he take it? And as soon as Prabhupada came into the crowd, he came alive. Like this was nothing compared to what he was accustomed to. One evening as Prabhupada spoke, "My only qualification is that I have unflinching faith in my spiritual master," and a large firecracker exploded right outside the door. The audience smiled tolerantly. "Yes," Prabhupada said, taking the explosion as confirmation of his words. "It is glorious." Prabhupada was fearless. Nothing ever bothered him. And even if it was negative, he would make it into a positive. This is Srila Prabhupada. One night, Srila Prabhupada explained that according to Bhagavad-Gita, demigod worshippers are less intelligent. People worship Kali for material rewards, he said, but since all material things are temporary, such worship is inferior to the worship of Krishna. Kali is not able to grant the worshipper liberation from birth and death. Which is better, Achyutananda asked, the worship of the Christians and the Jews, which is mostly impersonal, or the worship of the non-absolute by the worshippers of Kali. Worshippers of Kali are better. Prabhupada said, because the worshippers are in the Vedic system. They are most likely to bow down to Radha Krishna and chant Hare Krishna than a Christian or a Jew. There is a chance that they will become Krishna devotees in the future if they lose their material attachments. Isn't that all of our problems? We all need to lose our material attachments. Prabhupada regularly invited his godbrothers and his disciples to join him in America. Sometimes he seemed to do it just to get them at least to think more of preaching. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had once chided that Gaudiya Math ashram was no more than a joint mess, the members going out each day and collecting enough alms so they could eat together, but with no dynamic vision for preaching. So Prabhupada's frequent invitations, you should go to America, come back with me, would stir them, even if they couldn't actually come. On visiting ashram of Bhakti Saranga Goswami, Srila Prabhupada saw that the audience consisted almost entirely of old widows, but he spoke as usual. This was a picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in completely amazing company of, Westerners, and probably people would be able to recognize some of these important personalities that he was with. And I had a hard time finding a picture of Achyutananda with Prabhupada on the internet. I ended up only finding the one of the cover. Achyutananda was one of the first devotees. Prabhupada left him here with Sridhar Maharaj, and he's in Alachua now. He's still a great devotee. He chants 64 rounds a day. So you can see Prabhupada really, really affected him. Even though he had taken sannyas, his lifestyle is like a sannyasi, but he's more like an unofficial kind of Baba. He chants 64 rounds a day, and he just chants and he plays Krishna Kirtan. And he's in his 80s now. He's an amazing musician, actually. One day, Prabhupada's godbrother Haridas Swami came by. He was heavy-set and loud, and he spoke very rapidly. Very happy to see you coming here from America. This is wonderful. Krishna is the sunam bonam, the cause of all causes, and I want you to come to my temple. When Haridas Maharaj went into a separate room, Prabhupada turned to Achyutananda. He wants us to go to his temple, but to go there, I will have to go into a rickshaw, and then into a tram car, and then onto a train, and then into a rickshaw. Aware of Prabhupada's weak condition, Achyutananda began shaking his head negatively. When Haridas Maharaj returned, Achyutananda said that Swamiji couldn't go to his mat. Who are you? Haridas Maharaj said angrily. You are just a brahmachari. You should risk your life. Achyutananda replied, I will risk my life, but I can't risk my spiritual master's life. Good answer. I like that one. Haridas left insulted. Don't worry, Prabhupada said. He's just very talkative. Prabhupada paid a visit to B.P. Keshava Maharaj, the godbrother who had awarded him the sannyas order in 1959. But keep in mind, Srila Prabhupada did apologize to all of his godbrothers. He said, if for some inadvertent reason I offended you, please don't mind, I'm so sorry. He did apologize. So sometimes this was a time out of exuberance, wanting to perhaps serve him or show him his mat. But Prabhupada declined. He came to India because his health was frail. So, I'm about to be 74. I understand now, how Prabhupada came across on the Jaladuta, just turning 70. It's a monumental, it's epic, the sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada made. When you think of it, when you're his age, then you go, wow, Prabhupada did this for us at this time, just when it's all hard to do. He did it at that time. So it's never too late. Prabhupada paid a visit to B.P. Keshav Maharaj. The God Brotherhood awarded him the sannyas order in 1959. Prabhupada sat on the floor and spoke in Bengali to his God Brother, who was very old and apparently on his deathbed. Prabhupada had Achyutananda sing for Keshava Maharaj. Keshava Maharaj requested Prabhupada to visit his ashram, Devananda Mat in Navadvip. Srila Prabhupada had wanted to return to the U.S. as a permanent resident, but his students in America hadn't been able to get the necessary clearance from the U.S. Immigration Department. The devotees in Boston had gotten in touch with a few Harvard Indology professors, but had obtained no good signed statements about Prabhupada's importance. All the ISKCON centers had written formal letters writing A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and had presented copies to the U.S. Immigration Office. But unless the devotees could produce something more impressive, like a government recommendation or a university's offer for him to join their faculty, Prabhupada could not become a U.S. resident. On October 13th, Prabhupada wrote to his disciples in Montreal, "I am very anxious to go to Montreal. Therefore, you must try your best to get my immigration visa on the basis of my being an authorized Vaishnava minister based on Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad-Gita." Rather than wait indefinitely for permanent residency, Prabhupada decided to apply for a visitor's visa. He went with Achyutananda to the U.S. consulate on Harrington Road. There in the middle of Calcutta, they entered a small piece of America with everything shiny, new, and efficient. Air conditioners, stainless steel water coolers, electric security doors, U.S. Marines, and American flags. Sitting before the secretary of the consulate, Prabhupada looked small and humble. "I want a visa to see my students in America," he said softly. "Do you have any letters?" the secretary asked. Achyutananda handed over the letters from the temples. The secretary reviewed them and quickly gave Prabhupada a 4-month visa. While leaving the building, Prabhupada remarked, "I will just get anything, and then it can be extended." On October 19th, Prabhupada wrote Harigriva regarding his imminent return. "I'm already preparing for returning to USA, and I have obtained a visitor visa the day before yesterday. Most probably I shall take the first chance to return to USA upon my return from Navadvip." And on October 22nd, he wrote Umapati, "You will be glad to know that I have already secured a visitor's visa to your country and have asked my travel agent to book my seat on the earliest possible date. I think I shall be in your midst in the middle of November." On October 24th, Prabhupada traveled with Achyutananda and Ramanuja to Navadvip. Although the local train took 4 hours, the lush Bengal countryside gradually revealed its heavenly beauty, and Prabhupada's health seemed to improve just from the pleasant journey. By the time they arrived at Navadvip, Achyutananda and Ramanuja were also, they could open their eyes without blinking through drops of perspiration. A large kirtan party of brahmacharis, mostly members of Keshava Maharaj's Devananda Gaudiya Math, met Srila Prabhupada at the Navadvip train station. The brahmacharis were meticulously neat, with their robes all dyed the same shade of saffron. Their Vaishnav tilak markings bold and distinct, their heads smoothly shaved, their sikas precise. It reminds me of when Srila Prabhupada traveled, because he traveled, was it 9 times around the earth? I mean, so many, he traveled a lot. And that's another point. While I was young, it was easy to travel. I could get comfortable, fall asleep any place. And now that I'm this age, I've done a deep dive study into what happens when you go up in a plane for a long haul travel. Your blood thickens. It's actually really, really hard on your health. And Prabhupada was taking this risk for us. He was going up, you go up, and the air pressure is at 8,000 feet. That's not normal. And if you're there for hours and hours and you go up very quickly, that's why there's risk of deep vein thrombosis and various things. He took such risks for us. Such risks. And, because I've been dreading travel because it's hard and you get ill, you don't feel good on the plane. And I was thinking, boy, Prabhupada did this. And he did it a lot. Like he came to Hawaii, that's where I'm from, 9 times also. 9 times. And there were sometimes he would stay just a few days. He would only stay a few days or he'd stay a few weeks. I'm just about getting over my jet lag in a few weeks. Prabhupada never said the word jet lag, not once. He was really transcendental. I know I'm not this body in theory, but in fact, I get bogged down. But Prabhupada took this inconvenience to keep all of his disciples enthused in Krishna consciousness. He was encouraged to return to their midst. He says, I will be returning into your midst. He was relishing teaching Krishna consciousness. So by itself, it would just give him the enthusiasm by which he could do the impossible. Can you imagine traveling that much? I frankly can't, and I used to not mind travel. So, the other thing when the plane would get ready to land, wherever he was, he would go, as soon as it would say, fasten your seatbelts, the plane is landing, Prabhupada would get up and go to the bathroom, make sure his tilak was just right, and then he'd come back to his seat and he'd arrange his bead bags so that it was, and this is reminding me because they're saying how precisely decorated they were with tilak. Srila Prabhupada would come out of the plane looking fresh. Not like, I come out of the plane looking like a rat, bedraggled, like crumpled. Prabhupada would come out just beaming, fresh as a daisy, newly applied tilak, just crisp, magical, actually, Vaikuntha, stepping right out of the spiritual world. They offered Prabhupada and his party aromatic garlands from the flowers resembling lotuses and gathered around Srila Prabhupada with worshipful enthusiasm. Also present were a few Sridhar Maharaj disciples waiting with rickshaws to take Prabhupada and their disciples to their guru's ashram. Although between the two groups there was an unspoken competition for Srila Prabhupada's presence, he had previously agreed to go to Sridhar Maharaj's place. He promised the members of Devananda Math that he would visit them next. So you can see the transcendental competition for Prabhupada's presence was on, even amongst his godbrothers. It's like, who's going to get Prabhupada's darshan? Hare Krishna. Soon after leaving the station, the rickshaws turned into a road lined with lush tropical vegetation, banana trees, tall bamboos, exotic blossoming flowers. Prabhupada saw simple villagers working near their straw and mud huts, and in the distance, the spire of Sridhar Maharaj's temple. A kirtan party greeted Prabhupada at the outer gates of Sridhar Maharaj's ashram, chanting Hare Krishna and playing the kartals and clay mridangas. Srila Prabhupada entered the temple, offered obeisances before the deities of Radha Krishna, and then went to see his godbrother. Sridhar Maharaj was very old, his sight failing, his joints stiff with arthritis. He stayed mostly in his room and sometimes on his veranda, and moved only with slow, rickety motions. He was an austere and kindly Vaishnav and smiled heartily on seeing Prabhupada and his disciples. In fluent English, he began praising Prabhupada preaching in America, repeatedly using Prabhupada's phrase, Krishna consciousness. Swamiji's work, he said, was the fulfillment of Lord Chaitanya's prophecy that Krishna consciousness would one day spread all over the world. He laughed and smiled and praised the Krishna consciousness movement with no trace of jealousy. So you appreciate this phrase, Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada smiled. Yes, Sridhar Maharaj replied, and the disciples of Swami Maharaj also. And he turned towards Achyutananda and Ramanuja. With very little effort, your preaching will go far. The boys were astonished. This was really something to write home about, sitting on the roof of the temple in this jungle paradise with old Sridhar Maharaj appreciating Swamiji's works as the greatest work on behalf of Lord Chaitanya, and Swamiji sitting relaxed, grinning, and making humble replies. It was the high point of the trip. My dear Satsarup, this is a letter now to Satsarup, please accept my blessings. I have already duly received the invitation from Harvard University. It is understood that they are scheduling me for 20th November between 6 and 10 p.m. I can start immediately on the strength of my visitor's visa, but I am awaiting for Mukunda's reply for his trying for my permanent visa. Yesterday, we have all come to Navadvip. This place is another establishment of one of my godbrothers. It is a very nice and extensive place, and my godbrother, B.R. Sridhar Maharaj, has spared one entire nice house for our stay. He has also agreed to cooperate with our society. We shall observe his birthday ceremony tomorrow, and the brahmacharis shall learn how to celebrate the spiritual master's birthday. See, we didn't even know how to properly celebrate Prabhupada's Vyas Puja yet. Hare Krishna. Vyas Puja Day, the observance of B.R. Sridhar Maharaj's birthday, was October 27th. His disciples had erected a pandal on the temple road, and about 100 people attended. Sridhar Maharaj sat on his Vyasasan, and Prabhupada and other sannyasis, all wearing flower garlands, sat in chairs next to Sridhar Maharaj. Prabhupada spoke in Bengali. Some of Sridhar Maharaj's disciples, inspired by Prabhupada's preaching about the glories of spreading Krishna consciousness in the West, delivered speeches in English as Vyas Puja homages to their spiritual master. Oh, this was probably for the benefit of Prabhupada's disciples, so they could hear how the spiritual master is glorified. How wonderful. That was very kind of them. Teaching how to properly glorify your spiritual master. Let's see, where did we leave off here? Sridhar Maharaj, also speaking in English, gave a very scientific lecture on Krishna consciousness and the senses. Afterwards, Prabhupada told his disciples, he has very high realizations, but he is keeping them to himself. Every morning before, Sridhar Maharaj sent out a party of brahmacharis to perform kirtan in the villages. On Prabhupada's request, Achyutananda and Ramanuja joined them, leaving before sunrise and returning at dusk. Although Prabhupada and Sridhar Maharaj usually remained at the temple, One day they got into a rickshaw and accompanied the chanting party through the streets of Navadvip. The festival at the Devananda Mat was a big affair in contrast to Bhakti Saranga Goswami's ashram in Calcutta, where only widows had attended. B.P. Keshava Maharaj Devananda Mat had about 200 brahmacharis and 20 sannyasis. Some of the brahmacharis, however, were not full-time but were attending school outside. So the ashram's atmosphere was a little like that of a social club. But when the kirtan and the circumambulation of the temple began, 700 people took part. The impeccably dressed sannyasis, whose every piece of saffron cloth, including the cloth wrap, I'm not sure what that word is, was dyed exactly the same shade, danced back and forth before the deities. A dozen sannyasis danced in a group, their somethings moving together, dipping and rising forward and back to the delight of the brahmacharis. Prabhupada sat on the dais with other dignitaries and spoke to the festival audience. Achyutananda, on Prabhupada's request, spoke a few words in Bengali, bringing laughs and applause. Sridhar Maharaj spoke gravely in Bengali. A sannyasi from the Devananda Mat speaking for their absent leader, B.P. Keshava Maharaj, proclaimed in impassioned tones that although Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement had been predicted to spread throughout the world, no one had known how it could be possible. Now, thanks to the work of Bhaktivedanta Swami, it was happening. After a large feast in the evening, Prabhupada's party returned to Sridhar Maharaj's ashram. Sridhar Maharaj intimated to Prabhupada that Devananda Mat emphasized quantity where his own ashram emphasized quality. Curious as to what that meant, Achyutananda wanted to ask Prabhupada, but the time didn't seem appropriate. After 9 days in Navadvip, Prabhupada was ready to return to Kolkata and prepare for his trip back to the United States. He and his 2 disciples took rickshaws to Navadvip and caught a morning train to Kolkata. On the train, Achyutananda timidly put forward the question that had been on his mind. Swamiji, what did you and Sridhar Maharaj discuss? Oh, many, many things, Prabhupada replied. But if I were to tell you now, you would faint. After a silence, Prabhupada added, still, I offered him to be president of our society. I knew he would not accept. He is keeping things within him. Anyway, this is all beyond you. Do not have any ill feelings towards any of my godbrothers. They're all great souls. There are just some differences on preaching and spreading. Even in your mind, do not feel any ill will toward them. At the same time, do not mix very thickly with them. Achyutananda suggested, maybe if these 2 sannyasis had each other's qualities combined. Ah, yes, Prabhupada said, now you have understood me. So I'm just understanding, because I've read this a few times. So it appears like initially he was saying Devananda Mat was emphasizing quantity. I mean, more people, more people, more people. And Sridhar Maharaj was quality, boil the milk. And Prabhupada was both ways. He said 5 times, we have enough disciples, we should boil the milk. And this was over the course of many years. And in the last year of his life, he said it, I think, three times. Once in Bhubaneswar and another time. Maybe it was twice and at that time. But Prabhupada would also, he would tell us to go out and preach. But then he would also talk to us about concentrating ourselves to become more and more Krishna conscious. So he's saying that Devananda Mat was going out, and the other was boiling the milk. Maybe both, if they were combined. Like Prabhupada himself was the combination of both, in a sense, the outreach and also begging us to go deep, dive deep, read his books, chant, really chant deep, penetrating rounds. He emphasized quality and also outreach, both. So I'm just understanding this, even though I've read it a few times, I'm understanding it for the first time right now. So Prabhupada said, yes, now you have understood me. Srila Prabhupada's intention in coming to Calcutta was simply to prepare to leave for America. He had his visitor's visa already, but he thought that if he stayed in India a little longer in San Francisco, Mukunda might be able to secure permanent American residency for him. He went to his sister's house to spend the last days in Calcutta there. But after only a few days, he felt that the Radha Govinda deity, the deity he had worshipped in his childhood, was calling him. When Prabhupada had been no more than an infant, his servant used to take him and his cousin, Subudhi Mulik, on the perambulator, wheel them into the temple courtyard and take them before the deity, Radha Govinda. And as soon as Prabhupada would walk, his father would hold his hand and take him before the deity every day. Sometimes Prabhupada would go alone and stand for hours gazing upon Radha and Krishna, who appeared very beautiful to him with their slanted eyes and fine dress and ornaments. It had been the pleasure of Radha Govinda that as a child, beginning at the age of 5, he had performed his miniature Rath Yatra festival. 2 weeks ago, when Prabhupada had been staying at his sister's house, his health had prevented him from going to North Calcutta to see the deity. So he had gone to Navadvip without taking their blessings. And now, although still weak and although preoccupied with traveling to the US, he felt that the deity was calling him. For the past 150 years, the Radha Govinda temple had been maintained by the aristocratic Mullaks, a branch of Prabhupada's own family. The Mullaks had owned the entire block on Harrison Road, now Mahatma Gandhi Road, and rents from the block-long building opposite the temple had financed the opulent worship of Radha Govinda. In those days, the deities had been worshipped on a gorgeous altar in the large kirtan hall, and they had been dressed in silks and ornamented with gilded and bejeweled crowns and necklaces. All the pious Vaishnava families of the neighborhood would visit. And on Janmashtami, Krishna's birthday, even the British gentlemen and ladies would come. But today, the Mullak family possessed only remnants of the European art and furnishings that had once filled their homes, and temple relics from an age-old former grandeur. And the worship of Radha Govinda had pitifully deteriorated. Srila Prabhupada was pained to see the neglect. No longer were Radha and Govinda the center of the Mullaks' lives. The deity worship was still continued, conducted by paid Brahmins, but few people came to see. The main attraction now was the golden deity of goddess Kali in the large altar in the kirtan hall. Radha and Govinda in the family for many generations had been relegated to a small upstairs room in the Mullak compound. Oh, you can imagine how heartbroken Prabhupada was. Their dress was no longer elegant. Their valuable crowns and ornaments had disappeared, and there was no large kirtans as before. Only a paid Brahmin came in the morning to rub sandalwood pulp on their shining bodies, dress them carefully in whatever simple clothes remained, and place jasmine garlands around their necks, while a widow or two watched the silent proceedings. Krishna consciousness was dying in India, dying from neglect. At least it was dying here in Calcutta and in many other places in India. Even in Vrindavan, the impersonalist philosophy prevailed, and grand old temples had become residences for pigeons, monkeys, and dogs. Sad as it was only reinforced Prabhupada's conviction of the need to return to the fertile ground in the West. Oh, wow, it was an emergency. And just recently, I spent 48 hours on the Big Island of Hawaii. I was an emissary of Prabhupada deities, presenting Prabhupada deities to our God brothers and God sisters. And just this past few days, one of those God sisters passed away. And I really feel like Prabhupada, these deities are like an ambulance coming from the spiritual world to reclaim us, to come to us. Just like this was within the month of the end of Kandita's life, our God sister Kandita. She's just recently passed away. So Prabhupada is like in an emergency ambulance mode to resurrect our Krishna consciousness, to save us from Maya, the whole material world, to save India first you encourage the Western persons, and then the Indian persons will come right along behind. Now it's like the high tide of Krishna consciousness was in the West, and now the high tide of Krishna consciousness is in the East. It's here in India. And in the West, it's lower. It's becoming more, because I'm the temple president in Hawaii, and it's more of an outpost. We're constantly trying to do college preaching and outreach, but everyone, it's becoming more of a Sunday religion. Where here it's a movement. It's really, so the tides change from place to place, and Prabhupada was circling the globe to share Krishna consciousness. It was an emergency. This was an emergency method. He was saying that Krishna consciousness is dying. It's an emergency. He's coming with his ambulance to do Harinam, Sankirtan, and resurrect our souls and take us back to Krishna Loka. It's an emergency. And it's still an emergency. It's Hare Krishna. Prabhupada saw Krishna conscious revolution beginning in the United States. He didn't consider himself its creator. He was the servant of Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya's desire was that every Indian help to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide. Unfortunately, the very verses in the scriptures that prophesied a worldwide Krishna consciousness movement were a puzzle even to most of Srila Prabhupada's God brothers. They admitted it. I mean, in the history of mankind, was there ever a saint that went out of their comfort zone and preached in their language that wasn't their mother tongue? There was never in the history of humankind on Earth planet, there was never a saint that did what Prabhupada did. So they couldn't imagine it. It was a puzzle. No one had conceived of it. How do you go to the height of materialism, to the mouth of the iconoclastic means deity bashers, and erect temple worship of deities? There wasn't, even the various Hindus, Vivekananda, Paramahansa, nobody set up deity worship in the Christian Judaic society. They didn't do it. They were iconoclasts. They bashed deities. Prabhupada did. He came and he started deity worship. He set up deity worship. It was a personal process. No one did that. Even at one Vyas Puja, it was in Alachua, There was a guru from another mat came and he said, "Your spiritual master is so courageous." He admitted we couldn't do what he did. I see you're here. We have a minute or two. Are there any questions? Only joy. Hare Krishna. I think I have, this is too long. This one's too long. So we'll end here. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Hare Krishna. So it seriously. Hopefully I can remember it.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.